Lasers? Really? To change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts.
I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War to wash out the Viet Cong.
Weather modification is a growing trend both here in Northern California and around the world.
Here in downtown San Francisco, at PG&E headquarters, up on the 16th floor, the weather office. Marlar's job is to change weather, although he won't say it that way. PG&E uses what are basically big propane gas flares in the mountains. But others use different methods, including airplanes to scatter tiny particles of silver iodide to seed clouds.
We're here in Santa Barbara County, home to one of the longest-running cloud seeding operations in the country. Cloud seeding is the most common type of weather modification, and it has many different techniques and applications.
For decades, those with eyes to see have been aware of chemtrails in our skies, and for decades, we were called conspiracy theorists. But in 2016, while serving as director of the CIA, John Brennan admitted that chemtrails are real at the Council on Foreign Relations.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do.
In 2007, it was announced that nano-sized particles, known as smart dust, can be dispersed over the battlefield via aerial spraying. Biosensors and smart dust can become something known as body dust that can spread inside the human body as an active network, capable to provide telemetry from inside the body for the use of monitoring humans. There is a patent for using polyethylene glycol derivatives as a way to modify the weather, the same substances used in the COVID-19 lipid nanoparticles.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention. Well, tonight, KSLA News 12 investigation reporter Jeff Farrell shows us the results of testing we had done about what's in our skies.
It seemed like some mornings it was just crisscrossing the whole sky. It was just like a giant checkerboard.
They begin as normal contrails from a jet engine, but do not fade away like a normal contrail. Soon after, he saw particles in the air.
You know, because we'd see it drop to the ground in a haze.
Nichols then noticed the material collecting on the ground.
This is water and stuff that I collected in bowls. I had it set out in my backyard on my dad's pickup truck.
KSLA News 12 had the sample tested at a lab. The results? A high level of barium, 6.8 parts per million, more than 3 times the toxic level set by the EPA.
Anytime you put an aerosol into the atmosphere, it's going to affect wind speeds. It's going to affect cloud nucleation. An interesting thing is geoengineers are talking about how, if these programs were to be initiated, which they have been, how they will have to utilize and implement weather control and determine where it rains, when it rains, and who specifically gets rain.
The path of Hurricane Ida was not an act of nature. It was the result of covert and complex climate engineering operations. Hurricanes are being heavily seeded and thus saturated with climate engineering elements. Many of these elements are electrically conductive. Thus, exposure to powerful radio frequency microwave transmissions manipulates the seeded storms by repelling the storms and the air mass around them away from the microwave transmission sites, land-based sites, and sea-based SBX microwave platforms. This effect is clearly visible on this microwave transmission level monitoring loop that geoengineeringwatch.org captured during Hurricane Ida's path. As Hurricane Ida reached landfall, the storm was first stalled by land-based microwave transmission facilities. That slowed Ida's inland advance. The storm was then continuously steered by the extensive network of microwave transmission sites. It is the ability of the climate engineers to steer storms like Hurricane Ida that allows them to so accurately plot their exact future paths, often a week in advance. The U.S. military first initiated hurricane manipulation operations 74 years ago, Project Cirrus in 1947. Not opinion, not theory, not conjecture. It is historical fact.
Sure. Another question on the in the interview with the Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief.
So these are the facts. And this is the 10 technologies to control the weather today. Like I show, ionospheric heaters, sounding rockets, satellites, lasers, cloud seeding, cloud ionization, stratospheric aerosol injection, which we just went over, the artificial clouds with ship tracks, contrail-induced cirrus, and water vapor pollution. So this is how they're artificially changing the weather every single day and have been for the last 50 years.
All right. Well, since World War II, the United States government have been able to manipulate the weather. That's a fact. You can look it up. Since the 1960s, we've been able to control and even weaponize the weather. That's a fact. You can look it up.
We did it in Vietnam. Yeah.
Exactly. And in the 1970s, the United States Congress put forth a bill to regulate weather manipulators. That's right. In case you had some sort of a weather manipulation tool, the United States government wanted you to register it with the United States government and get a license for it. That's how much we were doing this in the United States. When Hurricane Katrina destroyed New Orleans and the Gulf Coast in 2005, a lot of people got very rich. I don't know if you know that. That story hasn't really been covered or talked much about. Millionaires, in fact, were made as a result of it. Millionaires were made almost overnight as a result of this destruction. 80% of the land, of course, was destroyed in New Orleans at the time, and all the way up through the Mississippi into Biloxi and everything else was wiped away, most of it purchased by property developers. And black residents of New Orleans at the time weren't stupid. They knew exactly what was happening to them. Here's a nice paycheck, now leave and never come back. We'll take your land. Don't worry, get out of here.
Right after Hurricane Helene, it looks like Florida is going to be hit once again with Hurricane Milton. Now, that being said, you'll be surprised to know that there are still a lot of people that believe that the governments, the powers that be, do not manipulate the weather, that there is no such thing as weather modification, that they can't manipulate the weather. Shocking but true, but again, a majority of people believe that the government cannot do this. But for those that know that they have been manipulating and modifying the weather ever since the 1940s, if not before then. And we know this due to operations like Project Cirrus and Project Storm Fury. with Project Cirrus, they were seeding hurricanes like Hurricane Esther with silver iodide, and then they moved on to much better tactics with Project Storm Fury. Now, if you were going to talk to somebody about weather manipulation, weather modification, and you were to bring up Project Storm Fury, Project Cirrus, it would pretty much be lost on deaf ears, because this goes all the way back, like I said, to the 1940s to the 1960s.